perception and other things also matter. For example, R.K. Goyal versus Union of India. So this is a small case in the state of Haryana where the Department of Industries, to facilitate industrial growth in the state of Haryana, it comes out with the list of industries which, according to the Department of Industries, doesn't require consent to operate. Under the they need not obtain a consent from the Pollution Control Board. But the Pollution Control Board said no, you can't do that. Any industry, a polluting industry which will operate, will have to apply for consent. We will inspect. We will see whether they comply with the standards. Only then they should permit. But then the Haryana Chamber of Commerce took it up to the government, and then the government found that there was a conflict between the Industries Department and the Pollution Control Board, and the government wanted industries to flourish in that state of Haryana, and therefore the government decided to supersede this Pollution Control Board because they were insisting on the requirement of getting consent as per the acts, the respective acts, the Water Act and the Air Act. So when the matter went to the court in fact upheld the decision of the state government, and it said that yes, it is instead it's required to promote industrial growth. The state has to promote industrial growth, and therefore there is nothing wrong in the Industries Department exempting certain industries, and therefore it is correct that the state superseded the Pollution Control Board. So this is one such instance, and then you can still find, because these are cases which you will not find in any environmental law textbook, because environmental law textbook talks about all those judgments which are which the authors consider good to be projected. But then to continue research in this particular area, I wish researchers need to do a thorough study on those cases where the judiciary has not done justice, maybe according to me, but then I may be wrong as well. But then there are instances where the researchers need to see whether it was proper for the judiciary to have done this or not. I think, yeah, I have exceeded by a minute. Now I was planning to talk only for 20 minutes, and then I was supposed to talk about the role of judiciary in protecting the environment. I hope in the last 20 minutes I have given you the reasons why the judiciary had to step in to protect the environment when the legislature and executive were there, and I have given reasons that why the Supreme Court had done what it has done. Not only Supreme Court, many high courts have also very generously contributed to this subject of protecting the environment. I would like to just conclude in a minute by one request to the teachers, environmental teachers, and the students who are listening to this presentation, that while teaching environmental law, I feel that overemphasis is given to these PILs, and which had resulted in law students perceiving that environmental law will only help in pro bono lawyering. As a result of which, they fail to see a career opportunity in this field of specialization. I only want to request all of you to change your perception that environmental law is as good a specialization as corporate law, because environmental advisory is now gaining as a very important area of legal practice, and most of the law firms, you will see that they have started environmental law practice, and they have already started setting up teams which are specializing and practicing in this area. Hence, I would want more and more students, because I could see that in whichever law school environmental law was offered as a specialization, either as a honors in the undergraduate program or in a specialization in the postgraduate degree program, of late I could see that there is not much demand for this subject because students, especially students, do not see a career opportunity in this particular branch of law, and that is why I thought that I should use this opportunity and use this platform to say that no. It's a gold mine. It's a wonderful area for practice, and therefore, please continue to specialize in this particular branch of law. You will certainly succeed in your in the legal profession. So thanks to all of you for your patient listening, and thanks to the Legal Desire team, and especially Anuj and my dear student Meghna, Megha, who had given me this opportunity, and thank you Nupur for moderating this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining and for such an insightful knowledge you gave to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next esteemed speaker is Professor Dr. Alok Mishra, Dean Kirit P. Mehta School of Law, Mumbai. He is the Dean of Kirit P. Mehta School of Law. His PhD topic includes feasibility of the Uniform Civil Code in India and his areas of research interest in constitutional law. His total teaching experience is 20 plus years. His research-based positions include consulting experience, industry exposure, legal practice, including one international award, one national award, one state level award, one institute level award, and one plaque of honor. He is the former associate member, Delhi section of Amnesty International, London. We welcome you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Nupur. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful and I appreciate the efforts of Mr. Anuj Kumar and the team of Legal Desire for holding this virtual summit and inviting Professor Shanta Kumar, myself, and Dr. Navtika Nautiyal in this virtual summit. Thanks to all of you. I also pay my homage from Bombay to my very hard-working frontline Corona warriors. And in that context, I appreciate the efforts of all of us from the background. In fact, I try to understand the importance of atmosphere, the importance of environment, the importance of biosphere, ecology, lithosphere, everything in a holistic perspective. And in that context, the greatest significance can be attached to the concept of gravity which is there with the earth, which holds everything around earth in a spherical manner. A sphere of atoms, a sphere of earth crust, a sphere of biodiversity, sphere of water, hydrosphere, everything. And besides these essential elements for the existence of life on earth, there has been a good luck that the conditions of temperature and the content of oxygen help life to be there on this planet. Then, in fact, in the world context and in the context of India, when the subordinate courts lose their glory with times, in fact, and the teeth also, then new concepts are invented to give ethos and to give a big push to the field of jurisprudence. And again, in fact, as most of the inventions coming from United States, the invention of public interest litigation in law world came from Earl Giddon case in 1960s from the US Supreme Court. And then the concept floats to India during emergency in Bhagalpur blinding case when parents of Priya and Aman, they were fighting for They presented the first PIL generally believed to be before the Supreme Court when Jeevan Nair of Indian Express reported Bhagalpur blindings during emergency. And then the story of uh, Supreme Court transforming itself starts from there. Then Rayappa case, then Minka Gandhi case, and then the golden principles of the three articles, the golden triangle, its interpretation, and then the the concern comes again uh, from a different story. In fact, simultaneously going on at the time as in judiciary on the personal front of executive. I remember the news items coming in those days of newspapers during emergency. Menkaji fighting on dining table, on breakfast table with Mrs. Gandhi with regard to conservation of wildlife, etc. Raising the concerns inside the home itself, inside the PM's residence itself, about about the um, about the sympathetic view, passionate view, compassionate view, holistic view towards the protection of wildlife and as a great environmentalist. And that debate, in fact, ultimately goes inside the drafting committee of 42nd Amendment, and then in 1978 subsequently 42nd Amendment 1976 comes the protection of wildlife and forests, that clause. In the meanwhile, on international front also, the Stockholm Conference and then Kyoto Protocol coming. In India, this effort was being made. On the other hand, judiciary also trying to transform itself, variety of reasons. And then so many projects coming up after that due to the efforts of Menkaji. Project Tiger, Elephant, Project Crocodile, Project Rhino, wildlife getting conserved. And recently I was reading during last 10 years that wild buffalo is also an endangered species, and there is a Supreme Court judgment on that. In fact, the organizers have requested to link from my side the topic to human rights. In that context, I believe that human rights are human responsibilities when and wherever they are violated. People are the victims. They and their families need practical help. And in fact, many of the human rights, they extend to animals also, the other living beings also of this earth. In fact, I perceive um, the concept of rule of law and rule of constitution also in a student-friendly manner. I try to understand it, not going into the rigors of the doctrine, which of course I had to go, but how to explain this to students and to myself across the life. In fact, rule of law, when we imagine law as a legal person with 22 parts of it, legal body, more than 300 bones as there are in human body, so 300 articles, and then the gray matter which human beings have, preamble doing that function, preamble read with fundamental rights, directive principles, and fundamental duties. So that person, in fact, replaced the human being on the throne of India on 26 January. And President takes the oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution administered by the Chief Justice of India and then the big cabinet and council of ministers to aid and advise the president. So Constitution itself is occupying the throne. So that's how the rule of individual got replaced by rule of law. And that is what is the significance. And then comes the concern and the time at which the constitution came, the world itself was transforming. And I believe that except some of the learned teachers from the side of academics in the post-constitutional era from very few universities, they tried their best to give an impetus to academics to think beyond, say, from 50 years from that point of view, from that standpoint. And we saw some shimmerings of hope of academic activism, but that was very limited. So, academic inactivism, then legislative inactivism, and then executive inactivism had been the root problem. In fact, the problem in India is not of judicial activism, but inactivism of other components of public life. So, education about human rights, education about environmental studies came later. You see, the guide is inside us only. When I used to travel by an express train from Delhi to Lucknow, uh, just before uh, Muradabad, there is a place known as Gajrala. So when the train passed through that, always uh, very foul smell coming from Gajrala in 70s, VAM organic chemicals, synthesizing pesticides. And then anything which is abhorring to our senses, of course, will degrade the environment and will make life of living beings miserable. So that used to disturb me. But in those days, in the decade of 70s, there was nothing like environment education in India. Environment law was also missing. No chance of PIL at that time. And nothing like environment courts. Pollution boards also uh, hardly existing. And that kind of sensitization was missing. In fact, we were so poor as a nation and as people that we went ahead with green revolution, and we missed out somewhere with the concept of sustainable development and others because we were not aware of that. So sometimes lack of knowledge is also hugely responsible for destruction of nature. Then I clearly remember 1983 Bhopal gas tragedy taking place. I'm very happy to know, like when I visited this Union Carbide a few years back, and tried to compare with the judgment of the Supreme Court to clear the waste materials littered there even now in the famous judgment when it was requested by Bhopal Pidit Mahila Samiti, requesting that it should be cleared because it's hazardous even now to health. So that particular plant and synthesis of methyl isocyanate. Incidentally, I also met the second class AC coach attendant, senior official of Indian Railways, traveling in Bhopal Express, always commuting in that as a part of role of his duties. Who got that appointment on ex gratia in an ex gratia manner because his father was the last man to die as a station superintendent of Bhopal Junction. And the whole staff left, everybody left Bhopal because people were falling and dying on railway stations. So after giving Express, has seen the world, you are a young man of 32. So he asked his ASM to leave. Those are the stories, in fact, the way environmental law concerns got developed in India and how common people of India knew the hazards of such negligences. I remember Shri Sundarlal Bhagwan also, Professor Chandi Prasad Bhatt, these two stalwarts who were old when I was a schoolboy. Then MC Mehta, some lectures I attended as a student of public interest litigation course run by Delhi University. He used to come there and teach. And the famous Doon Valley case, the trigger point, in fact, of 1986, when quarrying in Doon Valley, it was not possible to live in Dehradun because of stone quarrying in Nasuri Hills, and then famous case of MC Mehta versus the state of UP, RLEK versus the state of UP, and in that it was the decision came and the quarrying is stopped in Nasuri Hills. So MC Mehta was a young man at that time. I'm referring 1980s, in fact, and a, a person of very pleasant disposition and very compassionate at heart, very humble. He looked every inch like an environmentalist lawyer and an environmentalist. Then, since atmosphere and hydrosphere, all these are assets of the whole humanity, like atmosphere, ozone layer, lithosphere, biosphere, ecosphere. Uh, they cannot be partitioned in national frontiers. They are the common property of nature, of earth, and the life on this earth as such, humanity plus living beings. So that is to be protected, conserved, and taken care of, and replenished also. And sometimes very disturbing to see that landscapes are being changed. And in that context, uh, the balance is to be struck between development and between naturism and naturalism and protection of nature. And in that context, the doctrines of polluter pays, then doctrine of public trust in Kamal Nath versus the Union of India, MC Mehta versus Kamal Nath and others, the famous judgment of Supreme Court in which doctrine of public trust got introduced. So these doctrines, they came to Indian law with time. And then I remember 1986, and we found MC Mehta running in the Supreme Court towards number one, where Chief Justice sits, and he straight away going inside the court and requesting for an immediate hearing, not even urgent hearing, immediate hearing, because he told his lordship that, well, if your lordship don't interfere right now at this moment, even within 2 years, even we won't be there in Delhi. That was the case of oleum gas leakage case in Delhi, Shriram Food and Fertilizers case. And in that, Najafgarh plant was the concerned plant from where the leakage had started and endangering the life of old Delhi, whole of Delhi. And then Supreme Court taking it up and ordering the fire officer Delhi and Delhi government to do the needful immediately. And that's how, that was the spirit of Sri MC Mehta and the concerns which these lawyers had and the way they were instrumental in getting the environmental law jurisprudence winning in India. Then again, in fact, in 1992, to make things simple, Supreme Court told in simple words in Subhash Bhatti's state of Bihar that water and air stand included in the term life in Article 21. They are essential components of life, and hence, right to water, right to air are fundamental rights. And of course, till then even, the court clarified they were very important human rights. And in this way, then series of judgments, which I would like Navtika to deal more about them. She has been one of my wonderful students, and I feel proud of she being on the panel today. Very proud I am. And even at that time, she was one of the best students and topper of his batch, and also working very hard as a faculty member for over a decade now. Then issues related to coastal ecology have been there and highlighted in India and remedied. And then we all saw the concerns with regard to management of the disposal of the hazardous substances from industries. We also came across with glorious judgment with regard to noise pollution and ban on crackers and all that. Then again, you see, some activists further touch me, like Meda Patkar in Narmada Bachao Andolan, the judgment which said that Narmada Bachao Andolan versus Union of India, that right to water is a fundamental right, basic need for survival. So some such statements when came from court, in fact, they made people of India know what are fundamental rights, what are human rights, what is constitution. Like nobody was knowing constitution, what exactly it is amongst commoners. And quite often people quote that this provision is not there in constitution, whereas that is a provision of IPC. So that kind of confusion, but kudos to Delhi Chief Minister who always referred constitution for over 8 years and made it people friendly. People started thinking and talking about constitution at least. Then teaching human rights and environment education has also been very helpful in the present time. In fact, my submission has been that things should go from academics to executive to legislature, and then judiciary is the final forum to settle the disputes. But then activism in these areas is also required. Academic activism, executive activism, legislative activism. Nobody has stopped them to be non-active or not active. So that is the right path. In fact, the universities and colleges have to show the path to lead and set the moral tone of the society, the approach, thinking approach of the society, the vision of the society, the perception of the society. They are in fact like our roles as students and teachers of law. Then once upon a time in a seminar, a question was raised to me that what is the object of knowledge? It was a very interesting question, in fact. So I said that to my mind, the object of knowledge is to do welfare of a single human being as well as of the humanity. Whatever kind of knowledge it is, whether it is medical sciences, whether it is architecture, whether it is engineering, computer sciences, social sciences, legal sciences, the object is to make human life comfortable and worth living and even more effective. So knowledge and thought are important to be conveyed. In Indian constitutional perspective, we all know that related articles are Article 21, 48A, 47 to 39E related to equal justice, which further gave teeth to implementation of pro bono jurisprudence, 32 to 26, 141, 142, 39 capital A, then 51A, technology, fundamental duties. These are the related provisions and in the implementation of international agreements in 250. These are the provisions which help us in understanding the theme and the requirement in the light of that or the remedies in the light of that. Then we have to mitigate and be very aware with regard to ill effects of industrialization. Industrialization is required to be done in a manner in which the state on the whole, within the concept of Article 12, I am speaking, governments of the state assemblies, parliament, central government, people of India, I add. So all these, everyone has to think in terms of that. And everyone has to keep in mind as industrialists, as industrial workers, as license issuing authorities, as policy making authorities, as law making authorities, at any level that it should, the ill effects of it should stand mitigated. Then the requirement has been one or 2 points to include here. We have to keep in mind the capacity, in fact, of the nature, natural resources to clean itself. The capacity of environment to clean itself is to be safeguarded. And wherever replenishment is needed, it should be done. You see, the present crisis is also related to many of the factors which I just mentioned, the corona crisis. So some such medical issues, health issues, are not only related to the immunity of human body, but they are related to the immunity of the whole system, the nature as a system, nature as a provider. It also has its immunity. Once that immunity line is broken, of trees, of flora, of fauna, of marine life, of rivers becoming dead, depletion of ozone layer. Once that kind of immunity goes, then you see that state will be really extremely hazardous, and we have to take measures that it doesn't happen in times to come. So that from that point of view, I'm saying that replenishment, continuous replenishment is needed if we are changing the landscapes so often. And every species on the earth has passed through the test of survival of it. It's not a human being's own. And every species and its survival in nature is essential. So, with this note, I express my gratitude and thankfulness to the organizers, and over to Nupur.
Thank you so much, sir, for making us understand the topic so profoundly. And I hope we all understood. Yeah.
Thank you, Anuj.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, welcoming Dr. Navtika Nautiyal, Assistant Professor, IFCIA Law School, Dehradun. Dr. Navtika Singh presently working as a Senior Assistant Professor in ICFAI University, Dehradun. She has published more than 21 articles and research papers and presented more than 55 papers in both national and international events. Recently, she has presented her paper in 10th Worldwide Conference of GAJE at Indonesia. She is currently serving herself as the member of 13 prestigious editorial board members and reviewers in different national and international journals. She has also awarded as a Promising Faculty Award at the Summit and Awards organized by Legal Desire at Ansal University, Gurgaon. She has so many keynotes addresses in her credit. We welcome you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nupur. First of all, I want to say thank you, Alok sir, for always motivating me. You are one of my best professor. I remember your constitution lectures. First of all, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Sanjeevi sir, because I had very good interaction with sir, and sir's speeches, sir's addresses are always motivating. Thank you, Legal Desire, and personally Anuj and Apurva for selecting me for this topic. Because when I was doing my masters, I have done in specifically with human rights and environment were connecting so closely that I have my interest with this subject personally. Today, when I was thinking about this topic, specifically, role of judiciary in environment protection. Yes, Sanjeevi sir has rightly said thousands of articles are appraising. Yes, judiciary has done this, judiciary has done that. Rightly, they have done so much for us that we can have a healthy. I can say nowadays at least we can have a healthy and we can have a sound environment to live. But is it a properly sound environment to live or not? This is the question of the hour. I'll be dealing in my talk. I'll be dealing three different things. First, why we need healthy and we need a proper environment to live. Second, we will see how judiciary has protected it so far. Thirdly and lastly, I will see what are the lacunas we still, looking for the answers. Being into a lawman or a student of law, I'll be giving you some key issues on which we can still research about and we can still find the answers through comparative studies. So let's start my talk with the introduction that we are living in an environment and we cannot live without air, we cannot live without water, we cannot live without food, we cannot live without any basic need which we are having today. But why we are having all these things? When we see constitution specific person, either a citizen of India or not, no person shall be deprived of his life and personal liberty except procedure established by the law. Nowadays, we are at home. That is the procedure established by law. Our personal liberty being restricted. I should not say it is curtailed, but it is restricted. But the first part of this article says no person shall be deprived of his life. What is this word life and how much we can enhance or we can elaborate this word? This word specifically say that it is not a mere physical breathing or or just living. It specifically says that we need livelihood, we need health, we need pollution free air, and we all need whatever a human being needs for its proper and standard living. What do you mean by proper and standard living? Proper and standard living means, and I should put emphasis on that, that it's a proper behavior in which a human being can think, survive, live, and can give a resourcefulness to its country. Let's talk about the nature and human being. We are not only ones who are living in this environment. There are so many others like us who are living in this environment. That's, let's call it nature. The nature and human beings, they both are the part of this environment, but with our rapid development, with the industrialization, with the growth in agriculture, in the modern world, we are depleting, we are destroying these natural resources. They cannot fight cases, they cannot go to courts, they don't have lawyers with them, but the protection is given, and I quote, the protection is given in DPSPs by Article 48A, 39E, and 47, where it is the responsibility of the state to procure environment. Why there is a harmful effect on environment, and whether this harmful effect is destroying our right to live in healthy environment, this is the major concern in this 21st century. Being the guardian of Indian Constitution, who has the responsibility to protect the environment? And the answer is judiciary. Yes, judiciary has to, but by the proper representation. We can see that the rule laid down in Rylance versus Fletcher by the English court, where the concept is started with strict liability, was the milestone done by judiciary, where they have put up the responsibility on the shoulders of the people, that this is the strictly followed liability, and in the name of development you cannot destroy the nature, you cannot destroy the environment. But in India, we gone a little more far with this concept, where in India, the Supreme Court specifically put up the responsibility as absolute liability. But the concern is that whether this absolute liability concept being followed or not in modern contemporary world. Let's start the era of 1970s, from where the public interest litigation established as the milestone, and the modern fundamental jurisprudence has started. Because of the judicial activism through these PIL, the environment litigations filed by different NGOs, different social activists, common man, the third party, this concept or the activist group, this concept has achieved this spatial eye from of the judiciary. Here, I want to quote Professor Upendra Bakshi, where Sir once has specifically said, and I quote, Supreme Court of India has often become Supreme Court for Indians. These two words, Supreme Court of India and Supreme Court for Indians, is beautifully being taken in so many cases by Supreme Court. Let's talk the judiciary and the cases, how they have taken it. The first case which has talk about that, yes, water and air, there are two different rights which are inalienable with this fundamental right, that is right to life. There are series of things. Let me name them. For example, the polluters pay principle. For example, right to live in healthy environment. For example, precautionary principle. For example, principle of sustainable development. Public trust doctrine. Fundamental right of water. Safe and healthy environment. Absolute liability principle. Considering environmental damage as the public nuisance, etc., etc., etc. There are so many principles. There are thousands of principles. I can name them. These been established by Supreme Court. This is the role of judiciary which has been played to save our environment. Maybe if these principles not been there in place in the first place, maybe possible where we are living, we may not be living in this environment. Uh, but but everything is not concrete. uh, when I'm saying everything is not concrete, what do you mean by me? There is a critical evaluation. I have done. It is a third part of my presentation where we have to see that where we are and where we can ahead upon. There was a first and very famous case, Almira Patel versus Union of India. This case specifically said, and I quote, that the question of eviction of urban encroachers from public land, first issue. The second issue was waste management. See, nowadays depleting or destruction or these things are secondary. Now the modern and contemporary issues are waste management, how to manage the waste, first. Second issue. The third issue is, what are the different authorities who will be managing the waste produced by number of houses, like how much population we have. One person construct or made so much waste in a day multiplied with days, weeks, months, years. The next one is, which is like being a student of human rights, been clicked to my mind when I was studying my human rights concept. There was a controversy between Gujarat, MP, and Maharashtra in the year 1960, and the case name was the Sardar Sarovar Dam project. Yes, that was the case. After 40 years, Supreme Court has pronounced the judgment by the majority of 2:1 and upheld the plan for the development of Sardar Sarovar Dam. The court has specifically relied upon the findings given by that committee of NBA, which was set up by the government. First thing, public versus government, and that's the committee established by government, and the court has relied on the findings of government. So directly or indirectly, whether this is beyond reasonable doubts or not, I don't think so. Here in the minority judgment, if you'll read specifically, you will see that the social activists were neglected. They were not satisfied, and they specifically said that there were issues of human rights violation. Human rights are for humans, and we all are humans. So even if there is, we are talking about polluters pay, absolute liability, where is this absolute liability concept? It was a case of water, drinking water, and agriculture. We need water for everything. So this was the first case. Second case, the similar to it was Tehri Dam case. Even after so many years, the people who've been taken from that place has not reinstated. That was human rights violation being neglected by the court. For this also, if we need to file another case, there is no concept in CPC. We cannot. The next one is, concludingly, I will say that yes, undoubtedly, courts are also being driven by courts are also being driven by human beings. They may be having errors. There may be restricted. There may be limitation. They're doing in their own capacity. They're doing great, but how to do it? First of all, we need a strong mechanism within the government. This is the third responsibility of administration. We need a strong mechanism. It is not only responsibility of NGT. It is not responsibility of courts. It is a responsibility of everybody. Be it fundamental right, in DPSP, and in fundamental duties. So this duty lies on everybody. The next thing is, why having a polluters pay principle? Why cannot we have a mechanism where a polluter should be should not be compensated, should not have to give compensation, but should have a deterrent effect, should have a punishment, should have we have theories of punishment, should have, for example, let's go to the deterrent theory. Why to go to compensatory jurisprudence? And that's also after the pollution. Why not beforehand? Why cannot we have mechanism? The next one is, let's maintain a balance of separation of power. Yes, courts have limitations. They have to maintain a balance. They'll be seeing the cases which will be going to them, but rather we can go to our, the administration can see them, can put up beforehand judgment on them. The next thing is responsibility of everybody. Everybody means industry, common people, we all, judiciary, management, everybody has responsibility towards each other, because once this environment being polluted, see, we are at home and there are surveys, there are reports which are showing that environment is getting clean and cleaner day by day. So this kind of pollution we are giving to this mother nature. We have to see this. The last, there are issues. I'll just quickly give you those issues. Right to have fresh air to breathe is our right, but why not we can have a right or a responsibility not to pollute air, because this is also important for the animals, for the birds, for the non-living organism, for the living organism. Everybody is relying on this nature. This is not only our fundamental right, but because they don't have fundamental right, nobody is talking about them. The next one is, we have to see that water is essential for us, but what about the water pollutant? What about the marine life which we are destroying because of the water pollution? Third issue is waste management. Waste management, irrespective of its solid, irrespective of e-waste, irrespective of the different, for example, medical waste, we just producing the waste. Nonetheless, we are not worrying about that who will take care of this waste. There are no proper machineries about the waste management. It is also a pollution which we are creating. We are neglected towards it, but we are creating day by day. The next one is, what about the human rights of the waste pickers? We are talking about waste pickers, but we are not seeing, we are not even bothered to distribute the liquid waste and the solid waste of our houses. So this is the responsibility of each and every individual, being a lawman and being a layman, that we have to start from home. The next is, e-waste. This is the prominent waste which we all are producing. We are using, this is the e-time. This is the technology era. And after lockdown, we all see that this, now we have to rely on our technology. But we have to see that how to use it and how much to use it. The next one is, and the last one is about space pollution. This is the new era which are talking about that yes, we are creating enough pollution in the space and there is a problem of space trafficking. If we will not be taking care of it, then this era may come to the 1950s and 1960s, because the space pollution will not give you enough room to have more and more space, places. Concludingly, let's take a pledge. This is high time. We cannot give others this responsibility that you have done and you have done. This is, we all have done. We means we all, irrespective of how much, but there is a contribution. So this is the responsibility of each individual, not only judiciary. See, there are limitations of everybody. And I think and I respect that limitation of judiciary also. They also have limitation, political pressure. There may be so many, I should not name them. But if there will be no first hand problem, there will be no cases which will be go to the courts. So first, let's talk about the solution of first hand rather than the solution leaving to the judiciary. Lastly, I want to thank Sir Alok Sir, Sanjeevi Sir, Anuj, Apurva, Nupur for giving me this opportunity, and for you all who are listening me. Thank you so much, everybody. Please be home, be safe. This is high time. We have to take care of ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your incisive and empirical analysis with all of us, and by various case studies and practical approach to the role of judiciary in environmental protection. Thank you for joining, and we hope all the speakers will join us in our future events and sessions as well. So I would like to conclude this session by thanking our esteemed speakers who joined us and shared their valuable time with all of us. They took this topic very insightfully, and also by taking various famous case studies and examples. And I hope we all took all the important points and understood this topic in depth as well.